Hello, art lovers. Today, we're talking about The Irritating Gentleman by Berthold Woltze, the artwork that proves that annoyance has a form, a face, and probably smells of stale tobacco. Created in 1874, this piece is the perfect example of how, even in a world without smartphones, it was still possible to ruin someone's train journey. And the annoying gentleman depicted here isn't just irritating. He's a living work of art when it comes to creating discomfort. But let's break it down. The scene is simple, a train carriage. We're in a time when you couldn't complain about noisy neighbors on Facebook. No, you had to suffer in silence or, in the case of the poor woman depicted, hope the journey ended as quickly as possible. She, pale and wrapped in painful silence, clutches her parasol as if it's a defensive weapon against the arrogant gentleman beside her. Meanwhile, he leans back with an unbearable smirk as if to say, "There are no rules on this train. The air is mine, and so is your patience." Who is this man? Why is he so irritating? And most importantly, what is going through his head? The mystery of the irritating gentleman. We don't exactly know who this man is, but we can assume he's the kind of person who loves to monologue about his adventures and probably has a theory on everything, including your love life. Some suggest that he may be a satirical representation of a social class or a certain type of male behavior common at the time. In short, this man is here to remind us that irritation existed long before loud phone calls on public transport. But wait, it's not that simple. Some art historians suggest that Woltze deliberately left room for the viewer's imagination, so we can decide for ourselves who the irritating gentleman really is. Could he be a sleazy stranger, a man making a clumsy and unwanted approach? Or perhaps he's familiar to the woman, which would make the situation even stranger. A husband, a relative, or just an unfortunate chance encounter. The mystery remains. But what strikes us most, and perhaps few notice, is the woman's gaze, looking straight at us, almost pleading for help. A truly unsettling scene. A title that says it all. The Irritating Gentleman. The title alone is a clear clue. We don't need to dig too deep to realize that we're dealing with someone who knows how to annoy those around him. But there's more. The word irritating doesn't just refer to behavior. There's something universally unsettling about this figure. Look at his posture, the way he looms over the poor girl, the way he holds his cigar. He's the classic type who doesn't respect your personal space, who invades with unnecessary words, grand gestures, and attitudes that leave you powerless. Yes, the title says it all, but it also leaves room for a subtle psychological game. Maybe Woltze is inviting us to reflect. Perhaps we've all been that gentleman at some point. The desperate gaze. But let's go back to the woman's gaze. You don't need to be an expert to understand that this poor woman is crying, clearly going through some sort of suffering. But what is she really suffering from? Is it just the annoyance caused by the man next to her, or is there more? Some critics say her expression shows not just irritation, but also resignation. A tiredness that goes beyond the moment. Maybe she's returning from a funeral, judging by her black gloves and somber dress. Maybe she's reflecting on the unfairness of life, the compromises she's had to make, her job or her family. Yet her eyes seem to say she needs help, but instead she finds only indifference around her. Surely she's wondering when the train will finally reach her stop. The true tragedy here is that Woltze doesn't give us any clear answers, leaving us to ponder what might happen once she steps off the train. Will the man follow her for who knows what reason? It's a nightmare. A lighter interpretation. But what if we wanted to take a lighter approach? Maybe the gentleman is simply tormenting the poor woman with boring, unwanted chatter, while she just wants to reflect on her gloomy thoughts. In this sense, The Irritating Gentleman could almost be a prophetic painting. In an age without podcasts or social media, Woltze already captured the essence of unwanted monologues and unsolicited opinions, foreshadowing the era of one-way conversations. That annoying gentleman is the perfect ancestor of the modern internet commenter, who pops out of nowhere to explain how the world works. And the woman? Well, she represents all of us, forced to listen patiently while clutching our metaphorical parasol, or rather, our block user button. Why does he annoy us so much? Maybe that's the real secret of the painting. The reason we feel so involved is that each of us has had to deal with an irritating gentleman in our own lives. Maybe it was that coworker who talked about their diet every lunch break, or that neighbor who honks their horn at 6 in the morning just to remind you they exist. He's the embodiment of all those little yet persistent sources of annoyance that fill our days. Woltze has given us a simple scene, but one that is universally relatable. The ability to recognize these dynamics, to suffer them, and, who knows, maybe even laugh about them, is what makes the painting so fascinating. We've all been that woman, and we've all encountered an irritating gentleman who barged into our lives uninvited. The open ending. So after all of this, what will happen next? We'll never know. But we can imagine a silent revenge. Perhaps, as she steps off the train, the woman will find the courage to throw a disdainful glance his way. Or maybe she'll say something so sharp that it'll silence him for good. Or even land a flying kick to his face, Bruce Lee style. Oh, what satisfaction. Or in a more poetic version, she might simply step off the train and forget him, leaving him in his insignificance. Because in the end, art imitates life. And in life, sometimes the best revenge against annoying people is to simply ignore them.